Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this TICC final conference. Thank you very much for attending. Before we start, I'd like to give you some few housekeeping arrangements, as I'm aware that for many of you, this will be a new platform. There is a chat button at the top right of your screen, and you will see at the bottom right of the screen, you have a mute camera and microphone setting, as well as a no entry button, which will make you invisible to everyone. So I think it would be lovely if we could all see who we are talking to, even if your camera is switched off. So I would advise not to use the no entry button. In order to help your understanding of TICC, Transforming Integrated Care in the Community project, I'd like to answer a few questions in advance to give you some background. Firstly, who? Then what? And we will be discussing why during the course of this morning's session. So to start with the who are we? We're the TICC project financed by the Interreg 2Cs programme. And when I say we, there are 15 partner organisations from the UK, France, the Netherlands and Belgium, from a range of different sectors: healthcare providers, local government, universities and social enterprise. My name is Alice Chapman-Hatchett. I'm the director of the Health and Europe Centre, and we are the project lead for TICC. Our role has been to build the project consortium, put the application for funding together, and then manage and deliver TICC once it was approved for funding. At this point, I'd like to thank all our delivery sites and our evaluation partners for their work on TICC, and indeed our other partners who have supported the delivery, and particularly Jos and the team at Buurtzorg for being the inspiration behind this project. Moving on to the what did we do? TICC recognised that often innovative healthcare initiatives do not get transferred between different European countries. We are facing clinical, social and financial challenges across our region as the population ages. We wanted to take a successful model of innovative integrated nursing care at home, Buurtzorg, from the Netherlands, and transfer it into the different contexts in the UK, Belgium and France. In the process, we created over 250 TICC teams across Belgium, France and the UK. Whilst we created these teams and transferred the model, we looked at the blocking points in doing this and created a methodology to overcome them via the experiences in the project. We wanted to create better outcomes for patients, happier staff, and a financially sustainable way of providing care. With these 3 points in mind, I'd like to introduce Jos de Blok, Chief Executive of Buurtzorg Neighbourhood Nursing. Buurtzorg was founded by Jos in 2006 with one team of 4 nurses, and now there are over 10,000 employees, providing home care to more than 70,000 patients a year. The Buurtzorg model reduces the administrative burden for nurses, improves quality of care, and raises job satisfaction for employees. Jos, please tell us more about what you did and why you did it. Thank you.
So, thank you, Alice. Can you hear me? Yes? Okay.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. And you already said that this is the reason why I started this. I am a community health nurse. I worked for many years as a nurse. And I also studied economics before. And my frustration was that we created a system which was not sustainable, in my opinion, because it needed a lot of money. It was frustrating for both patients and nurses. So my idea was, if I can find a way and create an environment that is good outcome uh, on quality for the patient, that reduces the costs and is an inspiring environment for nurses to work in, most of the nurses would like to do it. But the system was not really inviting us to do so. So we had to change them. And that's, I think, the biggest struggle up till today. Um, you said we have 10,000 nurses, but at the moment we have 15,000 employees. Um, and we started throughout the years, we have grown from one team to almost 1,000 teams, but we also started services in the community. Buurtdiensten is focusing on domestic care, but is based on the same principles, self-organizing teams. It was also a kind of proof that it was not only for higher educated nurses, but also people who are delivering domestic care can work in this way. And also here we see the same results, proud employees who are not only cleaning the houses, but are really proud about what they achieve for their patients, for their clients, and are more and more focusing on supporting people as part of their work. And that feels very different than only feeling that you are cleaning a house. We also had a very good financial result, both on the, the results for the municipalities, but also the profit for these domestic care workers, and we even could give them an extra salary and a bonus last year. We started to work on mental care, so we have now the most fast-growing mental care organization, which is called Buurtzorg. We have a part which is taking for young families, Buurtzorg Young. We have maternity care. We build pensions where people can stay for a while if they can't live at home, sometimes a few weeks, and then they go home again. So we have 8 of these pensions and hospices. Um, and what we also did is we influenced the system, and it was very important in, I think, the beginning of Buurtzorg that we had a minister, Minister of Health, who was really engaged with us and understood everything we were doing, and also took a position in Parliament when there was discussions about what do we need to make a sustainable um, um, future for healthcare in general, but for community healthcare specific. Also, the results were very important. So we did some research with Ernst & Young and KPMG, and we showed that not only the quality was much higher, but also the costs went down. And it was also a bit funny to see now that we had a discussion the last few months that there was some confusion that all parts of healthcare needed more money, except for community healthcare, because there was 1 billion euro left on the budget. So and then I got messages from some political parties, usually parties who said, but we don't. It's not good that we have a budget cut. But I said it's not a budget cut. It's the result of what we have been doing for many years now, and all the other organizations followed our patterns. So the health insurance who were first buying healthcare based on cost per hour understood more and more that the cost per client per year was a much better perspective to focus on. So they started to negotiate with all the providers on a budget per patient per year, and they translated it in a price per hour. So so we did a lot of things. We reduced bureaucracy, we reduced cost, and what you see throughout the years is that our teams and the nurses are becoming better and better in self-support and in prevention. So, and to give you an example, in 2014, the average amount of hours was 108, while throughout the country it was 168 per year per client. At the moment, it's 70. So in 6, 7 years, we reduced the amount of hours per client per year with around 40 hours. So, and that's the reason that there is 1 billion left on community care. But and most politicians don't understand how it works because they think we have more elderly, we need more money, we have less informal care. But that's not true. That's an assumption that's not true. We will have more and more informal care if we treat them differently. So, and the burden, because that's another assumption, the burden for informal care is not increasing, it's decreasing because you are working with the whole system and the activities are changing from delivering personal care to supporting and training the environment. So it's more coaching, it's more still do the nursing activities. But this is a very difficult part to explain to peoples in the system who decide on payment systems and so on. So that's really the biggest issue, I think, what I see in most countries. What we show, and we're now, and there was a documentary in Holland last Monday on our new initiative, and that's called Buurtzorg Living. So we are building houses. We created a building corporation because we want that people can live in the community as long as possible, that they don't need to leave for a nursing home, and that the neighborhood is adopting these houses, 15 houses in the neighborhood, which is possible everywhere, in my opinion, from wood, so we don't have the CO2 problem. And what we want is that houses for a price they can afford, and partly in Holland it will be subsidized. But the idea is that we see the neighborhood more and more as an ecosystem where you can connect people and you can create ownership with people in the neighborhood so they can have their role, and that feels good for people. I am really, after Monday, I was phoned by a lot of people throughout the country who said, "Can we do this in our neighborhood? Because we want to keep our elderly in our neighborhood, and we don't want them to leave for another city or village nursing home." So this whole idea about prevention, about caring communities, uh, about working with the entire neighborhood to prevent problems, that's growing, and you should see that in a growing perspective. So it's not just doing something and then you're ready. No, it has a long-term vision on changing the systems on a country level, and changing the patterns and the routines on a neighborhood level. And it's affecting a way. So we don't hear negative things from, for example, from families. They're happy that they can contribute and they know how to contribute, and they're working together with with the professional nurses. Um, we also started to study on what a neighborhood can look like in the future, the infrastructure of a neighborhood, so that the infrastructure is helping people to connect. So if you create places where people can meet, for example, like a neighborhood garden, that they can work together in this garden and they can do something together and they can help each other, then it has a positive influence on connecting people. So this study will give us another step forward in dealing with the neighborhood as a kind of an ecosystem, because also subjects like nature, culture are involved, and also we are doing this with architects and with industrial developers. So this buurtwonen, the houses, the prevention, and the infrastructure of a neighborhood, these are next steps in the development. And we still go on stimulating, inspiring people that this is possible everywhere. So it's, but we need ministries, we need politicians to understand that they should support these new ways of thinking. And what you see, certainly in times of pressure, of financial pressure, a lot of people step back and they fall back on old routines. And that's a big problem. So what you see is that, and it's also a discussion in Holland now, you see that this top-down management from the ministry is creating a lot of problems for new ways of working. So they fall back on old management principles, and they think they can control the costs in that way. But I said no, it's working around. When people are doing different things, you can control the cost development in a different way. So we are now here in, after 15 years, we celebrated our 15 years, and we've been working together with you in all the countries and many other countries. And it's funny to see that, like in a country in Taiwan, it's growing much faster than in some European countries, because the difference in culture is it's much bigger than here. But one of the most important things what happened in Taiwan was that the prime minister himself supported the idea. Very supportive in different cities to start projects. So it's very important if you have these people in the system who understand this. And I think there is for me, should be a big responsibility within the EU, that we talk not only about coast development, about creating more human ways of dealing with people, vulnerable people. I hope that in the future the EU will focus on this topic, because what I see is the things that politicians pick out first is a lower cost, and result of dealing with in a different way with humans, uh, humanity before bureaucracy, above bureaucracy, focusing on good environments to work in for professional workers. So these are important, and then the result is that we reduce the cost. So I hope that we can have a nice day today and discuss the obstacles, but that we also have create some optimism in that this is possible, and you only need to be very consistent in the principles. So this is what I would like to share today with you, and I'm very happy to be connected with most of you, and to be of any help if it's needed in the countries where you are working and living. So thank you for all the nice relations built throughout this project, and I hope this is not the end, but this is the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jos, an inspiration to all of us, and long may that relationship and journey continue. Good morning, everybody. My name is Helen Martin. I'm the Director of Clinical Quality and Nursing at Medway Community Healthcare. Medway Community Healthcare is a community interest company in the UK based in Kent. We also have other Kent partners that we work closely with. I have been with TICC since the beginning of the journey in 2017, so it's my pleasure to be able to help facilitate this final conference. I've been a community nurse similar to Jos for over 20 years, and everything about TICC and everything that we do is at the heart of community nursing. So as I said, my role today is to help facilitate the morning session, but there are lots of helpers behind the scene that are making the work, making your conference come live to you and operating all the technical things. So I'd like to thank those for their support. So next slide, please. So the key question for me and for our next speakers is, why participate in TICC? We've already heard from Alice that the 2Cs area faces similar clinical, social and financial problems across health and social care. For all of you that are attending today, I'm sure you recognise the challenges that we've had, and certainly with the pandemic and COVID, that has only added to our burden of how we manage to provide good quality care. Recruitment and retention has continued to be a challenge, and that always impacts on the quality of care that we provide. And as Alice mentioned, we've had a number of initiatives that have been innovative highlighted to us, but very rarely they've been transferred across from country to country. So the question is, why? We really wanted to take TICC, the successful Netherlands model of Buurtzorg, and try and replicate that. And as you will hear today, we have been able to replicate it in full, and then we've also been able to take the really good bits of Buurtzorg and apply that to lots of other teams outside of our project area. Better outcomes. We always want better outcomes for ourselves, our families, and more importantly, our local community. And the Buurtzorg model's defining feature for us was around self-managing nursing teams who had the increased autonomy and empowerment to do what they do well, nurse or care. We saw that the Buurtzorg model had more manageable workload and better work-life balance. We know that patients reported higher satisfaction and improved quality of care and increased independence. And financially, the model gave significant savings to the Dutch system as it decreased the burden of care. So why wouldn't we want to participate in TICC? TICC has presented us with the opportunity and methodology to overcome some of those barriers and transfer that service model from one area to another. In our different ways, you will hear how we have tested the implementation of Buurtzorg through integrated care, creation of self-directed teams, and all aspects of care and the business. The following speakers, presentations and videos aim to share with you some of our experiences of the TICC journey, the people we met, the things we learned, and how we have developed the model in our own countries and organisations, all of it for the benefit of our patients and our local communities. So it's now with pleasure that I introduce you to the next three speakers, Sue, Arnold and Viela, who are our partner organisations and are going to talk about TICC from their perspective. The first person I'm going to hand you over to is Sue Wilson, who will then introduce the following speakers.
Hello, good morning all. So as Helen's introduced me, I'm Sue Wilson. I work for Medway Community Healthcare. I'm part of a tri-partnership from the UK perspective. So in terms of my other partners, they are Peter Brooks, Programme Manager from Kent Community Hospitals Foundation Trust, and Alison Mills was the Project Manager from Adult Social Care and Kent County Council. So these were the people from the UK partnerships and their representatives. Next slide, please. So like Jos and Helen have discussed already, why were we interested in this project? Clearly we have an ageing population with decreasing public spending, but the aim is to deliver great quality care. We've got a lot of qualified staff leaving, as with other countries, but we want happy and motivated staff that want to stay and improve our retention rates. There's lots of fragmented care, lots of emergency admissions, poor patient experience, and a high level of patient dependency are currently across the health and care economy. We want our patients to be engaged, and we want them to have a good patient experience and get a great outcome. Next slide, please. So in relation to the project, its alignment with the longer-term plan for the NHS has become more and more into focus, with redesigning of teams into neighbourhoods and sorting our teams to become self-managed. It's also about reinstilling a holistic rather than a task-centred approach to care. We sort of created some of our own activity and demand by focusing on task rather than a personalised centred approach to care. Empowering our individuals, both our staff and patients, will encourage self-reliance and increasing the use of our wider community support for our patients, all aligned with the NHS long-term plan. Next slide, please. A term that I've learned throughout the project, which I love, is retro innovation, because some of this is not new. In the UK, health and social care used to be more joined at the hip until 1974, when it was devolved into health providers and social care providers. In 1990, this changed slightly with the internal market for the supply of healthcare, making the state an enabler rather than a supplier of healthcare. That brought its own issues in terms of, some of us on the front line would suggest fragmentation of care. Now we have, more recently in 2020, the Health and Social Care Act being passed, where integrated care systems have been formalised, and they comprise of integrated care boards representing statutory bodies responsible for the planning of most NHS services, but more importantly, integrated care partnerships, bringing health, care and the voluntary agencies and social enterprises much closer together to look at the best way how we can resolve issues, demand and activity levels together more effectively and more efficiently. Next slide, please. So there's always the debate, is it healthcare, is it social care, healthcare or health and care? I know Jos would say it's healthcare, they are the same thing. So this is just a really simple example where a lady was discharged from hospital. She'd had a knee operation. The community nurses were going in to help her with her wound dressings. She didn't really need much support at all. The lady's main concern was, though, she hadn't had a shower since she came out of hospital. She was feeling, she'd lost her confidence really to go and shower alone. So at the next visits, the nurses included not only doing her wound dressing, but enable her to shower. That's quite I would suggest, a novel concept, that they will do both the health and care provision. But for that person, that's what was important to them. And for the system, that's got to be a better outcome in terms of use of resources as well. Next slide, please. So that's the retro part, but the innovation part. So the innovation is the use of information technology. So one of the issues we have within the UK is we develop systems, but they don't always interoperate with each other. In the Netherlands, we saw a lovely platform that the nurses use, which interoperates very well with what they require. So there's got to be more work done across the UK in terms of IT systems and the interoperability. We've got to ensure our systems are intuitive and support and not hinder staff. A lot of the systems in the UK still need work to do to make them more intuitive, make them easier for staff, make them be able to find their way the system without a lot of training, education and support. We haven't quite cracked the user experience, which is our clinicians. Obviously, anything that takes them more time is then taking that time away from patient care. So we do need to focus on the patient experience when using our staff experience and use of IT systems. We have looked, after looking at the system in the Netherlands, we have looked at redesigning some of our internal systems to try and get a single sign-on process. Clinicians having multiple passwords and access is quite a blocker for them using systems that are available. We all have enough trouble as it is on our daily jobs without the clinicians having to access multiple sites. Some of the manual processes involving lots of paperwork, lots of hierarchies are also being looked at to try and reduce some of these down and to be accessible on the system for staff. Supporting and enhancing patient care, sorry, if I can just go back one. Supporting and enhancing patient care delivery. I think this is really clear when we're designing IT and use of technology. Does it actually support and enhance the patient care delivery and the experience? If not, we need to be questioning what we're doing sometimes, I think. So a lot of the IT is also around reporting, which is very, very helpful. We report plethora of information all the time, but does it change patient care? That's just a question I'm going to leave out there. So next slide, please. One of the things that we've noticed over a period of time, and probably much like they did in the Netherlands, was the deprofessionalism of nursing. So over time, there's been a loss of autonomy. You know, higher up, become very hierarchical, very much control and command, which we know was relevant during the pandemic, but that should be hopefully tailing off now. And commissioning. So there's a lot of people telling the nurses how they should work, what they should do, and makes it very challenging for them to work autonomously, which obviously we train them for. They have 3 years of training, there's a degree or master's level, and then it's lost when they come into the profession. We've also been very activity focused. A lot of the commissioning has been based on numbers, not on outcomes. It's easier to look at numbers than to try and get the challenge of patient outcomes when we're looking at holistic care. Another phrase that we learnt with working with our Buurtzorg colleagues was coffee and care. I think that's really important. We've lost the value of the therapeutic relationships. While nurses absolutely value it, in sitting down and talking to their patients, finding out about their families, what's their social support, all these things impact on someone's health and well-being. And currently the system hasn't supported that because it's not an activity such as giving an insulin. But that therapeutic relationship should not be underestimated, and the nurses absolutely need time to do the coffee and the care bit if we're going to get the outcomes that we need. The other point to raise is about moral distress, which has come to its forefront over the last couple of years within nursing particularly. The psychological unease generated where professionals know what they should do, what is ethically correct, but can't take the necessary actions. That has had caused a big frustration with qualified and unqualified nurses within community nursing. They deal with a lot of very complex patients that are palliative and dying in their own homes, and not to be able to sit and spend time with relatives because of the workload burdens causes moral distress, and then they rethink about their roles. What do they want to do? Is this job for them? It's become a real issue of moral distress, I would suggest, within the UK and within the community nursing fraternity. Next slide, please. So I very much see the project and the model as very much an opportunity to try and stem the flow. We know from recent reports from the RCN that 1 in 6 nurses are leaving the community nursing provider trust currently. That's far too high, and I know from personal experience working with community nurses, we've lost some very valuable and very experienced nurses because of the levels of moral distress that are currently in the system. This position is compounded by the community care providers, turnover rate of around 30%. I think the latest figures are around 410,000 leavers over the year. Our care providers and those that provide social care really are an important part of the whole health and care sector. The aim is that throughout with the project and continuing after the project for us to work more closely with our social care partners, become a bit more innovative. We're looking at pathways into nursing, supporting more structure for our carers to develop more health and care knowledge and work more integrated with health and care teams. Unfortunately, I think unless we absolutely accept that we have to do something within the UK in relation to our qualified nurses and our carers, the future will not change and it will only become worse. Next slide, please. Part of the project, which was very exciting to work with, is enabling the creativity it allowed us. They have a role in Buurtzorg called the Heat Shield, which very much put back on the agenda, looking at what we do, why are we doing it, does it help patients? If not, does it help staff? If not, should we push that to one side and focus on things that really matter to us? So keeping it simple sounds easy, very hard in the NHS. We love to put complexity in wherever we can. Releasing time to care, again, should be our main focus. Does it release time to care? If it doesn't, again, push that to the side. Let's focus on the things where we're going to release time, make it better for our nurses and so better for our patients. And it has to be a benefit to patients. And I think once you start asking yourselves these questions, is it releasing time to care? Is it benefiting our patients? It helps us prioritise much better what's important and what we need to focus on. We've also looked at breaking down barriers between health and social care, working more closely with our voluntary organisations, and hopefully we're getting some creative solutions in place to be able to move forward. That's all part of the collaborative working, but there is an element of risk-taking. You do need to support your organisations, because in being creative, trying things that are completely different, you have to have the support that are prepared to take a bit of a risk, and let's see where this takes us. And sometimes it will work very positively, but sometimes you might have to change. So it's a constant learning and development process in what works, where you might need to change things. So creativity, I think, is very important in embarking on this project. Next slide, please. So, working in the NHS and working with the project, at the beginning it seemed a really impossible journey. There are so many elements and facets for us to deal with to get where we would like to for both our nurses and our patients, and ultimately for the health and social care economy, because we seem to be creating our own demand at the moment, but not dealing with things effectively at the first point of care. If we could do that, then we can change and benefit, not, as I said, not just patients, families, staff, health and social care economy, but we need to be able to do that. So it does seem an impossible journey, but we're on that journey, and we continue that journey moving forwards. Thank you. I now would like to introduce my colleague Arnold from France. So Arnold, I'm going to hand over to you at this point. Thanks, Arnold. Introduce my colleague Arnold from France. So Arnold, I'm going to hand over to you at this point. Thanks, Arnold.
Bonjour. Good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to be here with you today. I'm delighted to take over. I put a black shirt on. I look a bit like Joss today. Got the same clothes on. So I wanted to speak to you for about 10 minutes about the Vivat home care service. We launched this service. We transformed our organization to try and have greater influence. So I'm the founder of this service, of this home care service. We are a solidarity-based service in the north of France. We're called Vivat. I'm also the co-founder of a collective which is called Union d'Abord, which raises awareness amongst people in the social medical sector, helping them to simplify their structure and to operate in a more effective manner. I'm also at the head of another collective, another group on home care to try and promote the value of home care, and we are working as part of a national program on home care and of caring for people. So, to give you a bit of context, our sector and home care, in particular in France, is facing three challenges. First of all, a job crisis. We have 25% fewer candidates on training courses for home care than we had 5 years ago. We have a demographic crisis as well, or a health crisis, because we have noted, as the figures were published just recently in France, that this summer there was a lot of excess mortality of older people in the north of France, plus 15% in mortality rate. So the health crisis is really there in our region. And the third crisis is a resource crisis. In France, we spend 1.4% of the GDP on long-term care, so for people who are care dependent. And if we compare this with the Netherlands, for example, they spend 3.4% of their GDP on such long-term care. So it's around 30 billion in France. It's 30 billion euros. If we were to add 2%, it'd be around 40 billion. So with the same level of effort as in Netherlands, you'd be more than doubling the aid if you wanted to get up to the same level as the Netherlands. So for us, Vivat, we are a home care service which covers around 60% of the North Department, the North region. And our mission is to ensure that everybody can live at home no matter their health situation, their health status and their age. In order to succeed with this, we believe that it is thanks the quality of home caregivers, that we can really provide a high quality service. In terms of our structure, well, Vivat has around 40 teams. The 40 teams are self-organized, self-managed in the region where we work. So we've got 40 teams, around 200 staff in total, and every month we are helping around 700 families per month. So the way in which we are set up is that we are very digitalized. We use smartphones, which are made available to the caregivers to make things easier for them on the job, but I'll tell you a bit more about that in a moment. Coming on to the second slide, please. Thank you. So why TICC? So in 2015, I saw that I was facing a triple impasse, triple challenge, that the regular way of structuring things, of coordinating, of planning things in home care was difficult, that coordinating things from far away was creating extra suffering. I noted that in that our support teams, this was really quite clear. In 2015, I had 12 people working in my support staff, and around 50% of them, had half of these 12 people, were experiencing burnout or were really suffering in the workplace. The second thing which I noted back in 2015 is that the caregivers are the ones who know the best about what the patients need. It's the caregivers who know the best whether you need to continue providing this care, whether you need to stop, change things, and that the model that we were applying back then which is a very top-down model, was limited. You cannot step into their footsteps and understand what they see. It's up to them to really know how to provide high-quality care. Another thing I noted was that the funding rules were really quite strict, and the pricing could be very limited when compared with the needs of our structure. So the economic model was really under pressure. If you're being cynical about it, you could say that it was a triple failure, failure in supporting the staff, failure in supporting the families, and also economic failure. So in around 2015-2016, a Belgian researcher, Frédéric Leluz, published a work called Reinventing Organisation, and they spent a bit of time studying how different structures were working, and this helped us in France to make things more simple, to simplify how we could imagine new approaches in home care and in healthcare by working on the ideas of having self-managed small teams and focusing on collective intelligence and using other managerial tools to try and find some hope facing a very difficult situation. This was when the TICC project was getting started, more or less. So here are some of the figures. Before we started the TICC project, the staff turnover rate was around 50% in 2018. 50% of our teams left because they were tired, exhausted. So I'm sure you understand that trying to maintain high quality care when 50% of your staff is leaving every year, it's obviously going to be pretty tough. On to the next slide, please. So, what did the TICC program help us to do? The cooperation with Buurtzorg and with our European partners, what did this help us to do? Well, it helped us to create a new structure for our organisation. It helped us to focus on small teams, focusing on specific geographical areas in providing home care. What we do is that we give them the responsibility, and the responsibility they're given is the responsibility over their daily work. So we entrust them with organising themselves, planning when they're going to go, where they need to go, choosing amongst colleagues about when to recruit a new candidate, for example, and also they take the choices in terms of developing their teams in terms of asking for extra training so that they can focus on a specific area of expertise. So that's what we did. And the TICC program has allowed us to finance a lot of time, manpower time spent on certain tasks in France. Any time which is not focused on actual caregiving activities is often not financed, neither by the families themselves, neither by the public funding partners. So thanks to the TICC project, we're able to have training, funding for training, funding for meetings amongst our teams, so that a care team can actually sit down. It's really important that you can sit down to organise and to have a chat. And this is still something which is not covered by the funding policies in France. And the TICC project also allowed us to have greater action. It's meant that the caregivers, outside of the time when they're actually giving care, they could also, for example, ensure that they were well organized. You had funding for time when caregivers could sit down and recruit people, look through applications, and to help do the onboarding of new colleagues as well. So in addition to the funding of this work time, what was really important for us during this phase of transformation was that we had some coverage to ensure that we would still have a positive impact on the patients and the families. So what we did is that we used a measuring tool, which is something you see elsewhere in kind of commerce environments. It's called the Metascore. So you send out some questions, so you can look at satisfaction amongst customers and unsatisfied customers and try to understand what's happening. So here is the graph. This is what the graph represents. And what you can see is that the Net Promoter Score, it's called, the NPS, is going up over time as we focused more on our self-organized teams, and this approach is really beginning to be implemented over the years. So when we were going through the COVID crisis in early 2020, at the start of the crisis, we got our best ever performance rate. So really, this was really a confirmation for us that during difficult times, very difficult times, the way in which we set up this agile way of working really helped to respond in a really excellent manner to this need for changes and the difficulties in the social context. We were facing a double situation of anxiety where the families and elderly persons were worried about COVID itself, and where also our staff were worried about their health and getting COVID whilst on the job. So we noted that by working with these small teams, it helped to make us more resilient during these difficult times. And this was confirmed by political speeches. We had to dig in and to ensure that there was not over hospitalization during a period when the hospitals were already very busy. So the families gave us good scores during this period, despite the difficult times. So last slide, please. Just got one more slide to go through. There we go. So we now know that this transformation has worked in terms of the services we provide, and we've also been attentive to quality of life in the workplace. But we know that not everything has been resolved just yet. In home care, the number of accidents is 3 times higher than other sectors such as construction or food and beverage. There's also a lot of paperwork to do. We have to make the family sign around 50 pages of documents when we first start to work with them, and these are people who are fragile, struggling. Also, the economic model is still not stable. We now have a national rate which is decided, but before COVID, a national report said that the minimum rate should be 24.50, but we are still at 22 euros. So, including inflation, now there should be around 26.20, because that report was a couple of years ago now. But the national rate is still stuck at 22. So the methods of deployment are quite limited. We were not able to access, for example, other economic boosters or investment funds outside of the TICC. We weren't able to get any local or national support. It's really difficult to access funding to accelerate with these types of innovative solutions. And the fifth point here that I have on my slide is that there are a lot of expectations to adapt to the aging of the population, but you need political decisions taken behind this, focusing on home care and real budgets for this. And this political willpower, this has not really been seen yet in France. They're still talking about this, making promises, but there's not been any concrete decisions which will help us to really be innovative and to really create something in France where we can allow people to age in comfort. That's really what I wanted to share as regards the experience of Vivat. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Veerle Nijs. I'm director at Ten Kerselare, a home care center in Belgium, Heist op den Berg. First, I will start with a short introduction of the organization Emmaus and our participation on the project. Then I will tell you a little bit more about the TICC project, intramural and extramural. Next slide, please. The Chairman Executive Board of current Director of Emmaus is Inge Vervotte. She's a Belgian former politician for CD&V. She was our Flemish Minister of Welfare, Public Health and Family in 2004. Then we have two managing directors at the moment, Jan Ceresia and Jan Klaassen. And finally, Lisbeth Zeret. She's our General Secretary. Next slide. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. The VZW Emmaus, VZW stands for non-profit organization, is active in various healthcare sectors, hospital, mental health care, people with disabilities, elderly care and youth services. Next slide, please. Emmaus is a value-driven organization. Our core business, our core values are hospitality, equality, solidarity, cooperation, quality, sustainability, openness, and integrity. We are mainly represented in the province of Antwerp. There are about 1.9 million inhabitants, and you can see a small map of Belgium. The red part is Antwerp, and bottom right, you can see a few numbers of places we offer within Emmaus. And within our non-profit organization, we have 7,035 employees. 17% of them are men and 83% of them are women. And then on the next slide, you see our slogan, whatever you do, do it with passion. The home care center where we enroll the TICC project, Ten Kerselare, is known in Belgium as a small-scale normalized living organization. On the next slide, you see what we offer, 2 daycare centers with 51 places, one for people with care needs and somatics, and one specifically for people living with dementia. We have a local service center, the PIT, where we are focusing on neighborhood care, And we have one residential home care in Kerselare, 7 houses where 16 people are living together. And we also have short stay possibilities, 10 places, assisted living apartments, 36 places. And then we also have our own service voucher company. We offer adapted transport, cleaning service, ironing service, and shopping service. We are focusing on new collaboration models, elderly home care and neighborhood care we think are very important, and then also the collaboration with the social welfare and local politics are one of our focus points. We offer in Belgium different forms of care. The previous slide, care networking, we have informal care in Flanders, home care, care hotels, daycare centers, recovery care in hospital, groups of assisted properties, short-term stay possibilities, rehabilitation center, living and care center, and acute care and night care. So a lot of offering of care in Belgium. And then the other services we offer are the hairdresser, manicure, pedicure, physio, and all the other things you can see on the slide, but that is not our core business. Then the next slide, you can see an image taken with a drone. So our location is very rural, many green trees. The next one, we are also investing on solar panels. And then you also see at the right side our new building, the village, where we enroll the project of TICC with our own Buurtzorg nurse team. A nice quote that fits within Kerselare, it doesn't matter how old one is, but how one is old. Tear down the walls with neighborhood care for all ages. Integration is very important. We work across sectors and we put an extra effort on safety and accessibility. And we want to create lifelong neighborhood care. We are a crossroad of care in Hest op den Berg, and we want to be a meeting center where we offer a lot of services for the elderly people in Hest op den Berg. An impression of our new building is on the next slide. The village is built in 2019, and in 2020 we welcomed our first residents in this building, and we did the TICC project and implementation of our Buurtzorg team in this building. An impression inside the building. Next slide. And then I come to the objectives and challenges. TICC transforming integrated care in the community, how we connect and integrate network care, the combination of self-care, informal care, and formal care. During this project, we did the transformation in our organization, and our objectives and challenges during the project and afterwards were a better outcome, improved quality of care, and also happier staff. How we can respond to the aging population and increasing needs are one of the challenges, and also how to recruit and retaining staff in the health and care sector. It is a sector with staff shortages in Belgium. Then how to reduce, or how can we reduce administration, how to implement the model of self-managing home care teams, how to create a change in our health and welfare system so that it's better adapted to the holistic needs of our aging population. At the same time, we also want to develop a methodology to overcome barriers when implementing a social innovation project from other countries. And how can we successfully implement a model from the Netherlands in other countries? That is the blueprint we created. Next slide, the route that we have chosen to take. First, we try to understand the neighborhood care model of Buurtzorg by education and visiting the Netherlands and the Buurtzorg teams there. We also learned that first coffee and then care is very important. So the nurses became closer to the patient and know the patient in all the aspects. We also tested the model intramural and extramural, and we did an evaluation of the model during the project. We also identified barriers on the road. We learned the KISS principle, keep it small and simple. And we also learned that the heat shield is an important issue in this project. We want to provide the best care at home. And then during the project, we also learned that a team is together with each other, with ambition and making things possible. The next slide. We started in 2017. In March 2023, the project will end. And in 2018, we started intramural in Hest op den Berg with 3 teams. 1 team of nurses and 2 teams of caregivers, and our head nurse followed a training to become a coach. And that was also a very important step we took, that the coach has to support but not take over. And then in 2020, we did extramural teams, 1 team at the Perle in Duffel, a home care team for 108 residents in the assisted living apartments, and 1 team in Hest op den Berg in the village, the building you saw before, for 17 residents living also in assisted living apartments. Our team of nurses in Hest op den Berg exists from 5 nurses, and they followed a lot of training sessions from Buurtzorg, but also the White Yellow Cross in Belgium. And we made a transformation within our organization to more self-organizing and mission-realizing teams. Next slide. The government in Belgium made some choices. For Flanders, the focus goes from curation to the focus more on prevention. The person with care needs on the passenger seat to the person with a care need in charge of his own choices, care-related choices, of course. Then from informal care on the background to informal care as a full partner. From supply-driven to demand-driven. From soloist in healthcare to integrated care networks. From institutional funding to personalized financing. And then the focus from intramural to extramural. Then on the next slide, we also have a few lessons learned during the project. Process-based approach in co-creation with employees. And it felt like renovating our house, while we were still living in the house. So it was a bumpy road. Sometimes we did 2 steps forward and 1 step behind. The behavior in all was the leader of change was in pole position, and continual communication in word and image was very important. And we keep repeating the intention and the common goal, that nobody forgot why we participated on this project. And then a very important one is focus on the solutions instead of the problems, and also celebrate successes was a very important lesson we learned. The next slide. We also have to be ready to respond to a few challenges we see in care. There is an increase in complex care. The average length of stay in a residential care is 2 years. In 2010, that was still 7 years. There are more complex care in our organizations. The drying labor market, there are not enough employees available. And how can we offer enough of quality of care in the future? We also have a demand of workable work and a demand of transparency, financial governance and quality. Increasing digitization in healthcare is also a very important challenge we have ahead of us, and the rising ethical issues and increasing diversity. There are also a few challenges that we have to face. Unfortunately, residential care is not sexy. And how can we improve our image? the underfunding of healthcare. How can we convince the government that we need financial investments to continue to achieve our quality? The affordability of healthcare is under pressure. The overregulation and increasing administrative burden, and the new complex care is also a challenge we have ahead of us. Thank you for listening to my presentation.
Thank you very much to our last three speakers from England, France and Belgium, and hopefully you were able to get a flavour of how they have all taken their inspiration from the Buurtzorg model and translated that into their own areas of work. Now we're going to see two videos which are going to hopefully share with you the experience from a user perspective. After all, that's the reason why we're all here and why we do what we do. So I'd like to hand you over now to David and Catherine, who will share their story in their own words.
Alors moi, je m'appelle Charlotte, j'ai 26 ans. Avant, j'étais soignée.
I'm Charlotte. I'm 26 years. Before, I had home care before, and it was fast. There was a nurse coming doing the injection or taking a blood sample, and then she was leaving. She was very quick. It was never the same person. And even sometimes, since she didn't have time, she said, well, go to the lab because, in my rounds, I don't have time. With Lorian, now this is a daily support. They adapt to my needs, and this way I can relax about this. And they have a follow-up booklet, and they also do psychological support. And this is reassuring because, my husband, he works from 9 to 6, and with my previous chemotherapy treatment, I had diarrhea that was so violent that sometimes I would pass out. So I know that since they're going to come during the day, if there is something wrong, if I faint or if there is anything wrong, if I have nausea, too violent nausea or violent vomiting, I know that they're going to come and that they're going to give me some advice. There's also the coordination. There is now I'm in therapy trial, and so they do the follow-up with my oncologist and the person in charge of the trial, since they know the products that I have to take. And they know all the rules that I have to follow for the protocol. This way they remind me what I have to do, what I shouldn't do. And especially, sometimes the doctors, they don't have the time to explain to us about all the products, what they're for, all the side effects that I will have, how much time I have, how long I have to take them, when during the time I need to take them. It is written on the papers, but sometimes we don't understand this. And I know that my nurse, she takes the time to say, okay, for this is for this. This is this way, it's for that. And since I have a lot of drugs to take, I forget. Well, I'm not a professional, so I forget what they're for. And I like to know what I'm taking and why I'm taking it. Having someone who takes the time to consider all that, it's a big relief for me to have someone at home and someone someone you can confide in when you're not feeling well. It makes a big difference. So that's what I wanted to say. So this project, Équilibre, this is it's very good for me to have nurses that can be a psychologist, a nurse, an advisor, someone who brings me a lot of support on a daily basis. This is really a project that we need to keep.
Following a procedure I had in a London hospital that I'd been waiting for quite a while, The surgeon referred me to the GP. GP referred me to community nursing. They turned up, absolutely lovely ladies that I got to know very well over 6 months. I was quite used to them, and that was extended when my mother-in-law got ill, and they came to look after her once I'd been recovered. The procedure I had involved a thing called a vacuum pump, which had to be checked, changed and drained every day. So I could look forward to either Leanne or Ellie or one of the other team would come and change the pump or change the dressing as well. And it was quite a complicated procedure, but they're always happy, cheerful, and they're very welcoming. Leanne, particularly to my wife's dog, which is a very small pug, and Leanne always made a fuss of her. So they were always welcome in the home because they were, you know, they were nurses, they were professional, but at the same time sort of very friendly and caring. So they become almost like friends, I guess. I guess that's the wrong sort of thing to say. But they did impress me even more when they started looking after my mother-in-law, who eventually died. She was actually at the end of her life. But as soon as they came in, they looked at her and said, right, we're going to make a phone call now. We're going to get you a carer to come in every day. And they did that just like that. So they had quite a bit of autonomy. Also, on another occasion, the community nurse came in the evening, and she was quite new to the team, and I think she was struggling a bit with the mechanics of the machine. It's not that simple. So she called Ellie, who's on an evening off, and she FaceTimed her, and I could see from Ellie she was in the process of putting her makeup on to go out for the night. But she still took the time out to talk the young lady through it, and that was done very professionally in that sense. No, they were still seeing me, but it had now gone to a weekly visit. Before that, for 6 months, they were coming in daily. And it was sort of a call from our doctor. So they came in as an additional patient, if you like. So they were looking after 2 patients in one house. My sort of treatment had reduced, and eventually I was referred to the wound clinic that's run by MCH as well, which I'm still attending once a week. So they came in as a separate thing. I mean, she was terminally ill at that stage. And they check things like the end-of-life drugs were in place and so on. Within minutes, they've got that sort of procedure done. And straight away, called, as I said, called and arranged for carers to come in. Unfortunately, she didn't last long enough for the carers and had to go into a hospital. But very compassionate. Near enough, they're generally the same people. On occasions, due to staff shortages, days off or holidays, they would call in somebody from another team, because I believe in Raynham there's A, B and C team, and the nurses that they were called in were just as professional. You know, they were very highly qualified nurses who, the majority of them would come from intensive care within or the NHS. So they're very experienced, and they did pass on knowledge to each other, I think, and I think it was a shared knowledge they had from the incoming nurses, which was very impressive. I don't know if it can be improved, but timing, okay, because you know they're going to come in the day, but you never know what time. And this was explained to me is that each patient was very different and they got emergency calls, which they might not come to 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night, which isn't a problem because at that time I was restricted to the house. I couldn't go out anyhow. I don't know how you'd improve that, maybe more nurses, but I guess that's not going to happen. So you had to make sure that, because obviously where the wound is, you have to kind of undress and you have to make sure you haven't got visitors at the time when the nurses come. But yeah, I don't know how you get around that anyhow. They would sometimes call if they were going to be really late or delayed, because they'd normally say to me, I'll come in the afternoon. But I was aware by talking to Ellie, I think it's the team leader, is that what they would do is have a morning meeting and they would prioritise who they've got to see. And I guess, overnight there might be an emergency call and they'll have to do that first of all. If they were going to be delayed, yes, they did call. I had a mobile phone number. A couple of times it actually happened when the machine malfunctioned, and I would text Ellie or phone Leanne. It depends who's on duty. Somebody would be there. They'd say, I'll be with you within an hour. And from what I understand, sometimes if they couldn't do it, they would draw on somebody from the other team, of Raynham A, B or C. So they seemed to be very together and they knew what they were doing, and it was a very effective service. Yeah, I think I got to know them. For example, I mentioned Leanne and her love of dogs. I knew all about her dog, its name and so on. So I wouldn't say it was a social event because of what was happening, but I got a bit to know about them. They knew quite, they'd ask questions about me and so on. So it wasn't, if you went into hospital, it's a pure clinical procedure. You go in, what's wrong with you, deal with that. Here it was socialised, if you like. It was, okay, we're here, how are you? This is what we're going to do. And there was some sort of socialising going on, which I thought was a good thing. Yeah, because without going into detail where the wound was, it's very personal, but I never felt embarrassed, because they were just straightforward professionals, and they've probably seen worse things than me. Thank you very, very much. I do appreciate your kindness, your care, and I wish you well, and I hope the team grows or stays together and expands.
I hope you found those videos as inspiring as I did, and gave a good indication of the impact that TICC had on our patients. We are going to be having a question and answer session after the next two speakers. So do please, I encourage you to put your questions and comments in the chat that we're taking a note of, so that the people who are speaking this morning can be part of that panel and we can have a good dialogue with them. So now's your chance to put in the chat your questions and queries. Now I'm going to hand you over to our next two speakers who are going to talk about the coach perspective, starting with Karen from the UK.
Hello, thank you. So I'm Karen Curtis and I'm from Medway Community Healthcare. I've been a part of the project since we started back in 2017, 2018, and have always kind of led from the coach perspective. Next slide, please. So when going into the TICC project, a lot of people kind of questioned what the role of the coach was. It was all automatically associated with some form of sporting events. So just for clarification, within MCH, the coach role is not to be part of the team. It's not to have a say on the topics discussed within the neighbourhood nursing teams. We support the team as a whole, or we can support our team members on an individual level. We're there as a sounding board to thrash around ideas about how the team want to implement ideas and go forward with their nursing processes within the team. We're not judgmental. And we maintain an objective. We are to be approachable and to enable our teams to come with us and ask questions and to discuss any mistakes that they make in their journey and to go forward with lessons learned. Next slide, please. So being a coach, we've encountered many challenges. We started our transformation and then came across a pandemic, which we kind of felt wasn't going to hold us back. If we're going to do this, we're going to go full throttle and do this no matter what. So we had to maintain a coach approach. It's very easy, especially understanding within the pandemic, that it's very easy to revert back to the managerial approach. What we wanted to do within our organisation was maintain that coach approach, to ask the teams how they want to go forward, how they want to manage their shifts, how we're going to implement the care in a heightened environment. And this is the approach we wanted to take as an organisation. Keeping to the model, it's very easy to revert back. Find yourself on one hand saying to your teams that you're coaching, "Oh, I don't think that's a good idea," and then in the other hand go, "Well, if you want to try it, it's okay," and then convincing the rest of the organisation and the teams around them that's a good idea to trust. Community nursing is very much and always has been about hierarchical structure. We, as nurses, defend our right to be team leaders and to have the seniority within our team. And what we wanted to get across to our teams is actually it doesn't matter where you sit on a pay banding. Actually, it's about what you bring, knowledge and experience to the team, and that is a big part of this model. We found throughout the last few years, and I know that a lot of my colleagues have kind of some Buurtzorg phrases around, so I'm going to be on that bandwagon. And when we started this, we got told, and I believe it was Jos that said this, you can't be a little bit pregnant. But when you go into implementing any kind of change, whether it's TICC or any kind of organisational restructure, to do this and to do this well, you have to all be a part of it. You need to all be on board. There's no point in trying to implement something if only half of the organisation or a third of the organisation or are with you. You have to all be pregnant. And this means about not selling mixed messages. We're not trying to sell an unachievable dream. What we're trying to do is make work-life balance better for our staff, but to get our patients involved in their journey. The patient is at the heart of nursing. It's the heart of healthcare. That they need to be involved. We need to be asking them what do they want, what are their goals, what do they want to achieve. We can put solutions in for the teams, but we need to encourage our teams to ask the patients those questions. So a big part of the coaching challenge is actually getting our nurses to encourage our patients to be self-caring, which hasn't been a big challenge, but as nurses we're very caring, we're very compassionate, and we want to be there. So it's getting that balance. Another challenge for us has been relationships. Within MCH, there are free coaches that cover our community teams, and that includes not just our neighbourhood nursing teams, but our specialist teams. And it's about having that relationship. It's about having that trust to enable them to be autonomous, to practice, to be accountable, and to assure us that they are following policy and processes and being safe. So it is having that right relationship. It's also about building the relationships within our organisation so that we give them the assurance that we are practicing safely, that we have got oversight, when things go wrong, that we're not hiding it, that we learn from it and we share those concerns, and we take it forward as an organisation going forward to actually have those key relationships and share those lessons learned. We only learn by doing. Retention and recruitment within our teams has been quite difficult over the last few years. We have had our ups and downs, but I think being part of the project has given us an opportunity to look at different ways to approach this situation. We've had recruitment days, we've advertised very differently, we've changed our recruitment process, which has drawn in new staff, whether they're registered nurses or other healthcare professionals, and we've really been able to kind of have a bit of a boost, not a massive one, but a bit of a boost with our recruitment and retention. And retention is about supporting our staff. It's about putting in the right elements to support them to be the practitioners that they need to be to deliver safe, effective care to our patients. So we've incorporated induction processes, and we've worked really hard to make sure that what we would expect as a clinician, we deliver to those that we're recruiting into the organisation. And another key phrase from Buurtzorg, and it's the one that I think the whole of the TICC project lives by, is keeping it simple. As a coach, when we first started this project, I was tasked to go up against all of the policymakers within the organisation to try and reduce down our policies and to make them look a little bit more simplistic, but actually giving that at the beginning of the policy, rather than having to scroll through lots of different pages. We have made a lot of changes within the organisation. We've looked at things from a very different perspective, and our key policies are always going to remain quite bulky because there are key policies, but those that don't need to be, we have reduced. We have altered and we have looked at different ways to sharing that information. Other things that we like to keep simple is the way that we utilise our technology, and that's something that we're still building on. But the main thing is about keeping it simple for our nurses to be there with our patients, to make sure that they get the care that they require. I think that's the end of my slides. Thank you. And I'm now going to hand over to my French colleague, Barbara.
Bonjour à tous. Déjà un petit moment avec vous.
Good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to be here with you. My name is Barbara Bezu. So I'm going to go over a little bit about my past. I joined La Vie Active as a coach, director and coach, and we're working in the north of France. So for home care services, we call this social medical services in France. And then there's a lot of regulation around this work in France. So as a director nurse, my main role was to contribute to ensuring that patients can stay at home in an area which is 112 square kilometers in the north of France. So we have medical prescriptions to do our work. We have 40 places for people who are over the age of 70 and 10 for people who are over the age of 60. We depend on the regional health agency. We opened in 2011. And we had some budget to do what we can. But in 2017, we noticed something alarming in regards to the teams. People stayed on average for 3 years. We also faced challenges in that we did everything using pen and paper or via Excel. We didn't have very digital solutions. We had many partners, but it's not always completely efficient. So this led to wasting time with our patients. And when we talked to the teams at the time, they were motivated to deal with these challenges. They wanted to feel like they belonged to our organization, and they wanted to move forward in their careers as well. So this is what led us to get involved in the TICC project. So we tried to restructure. Everything was very top-down at the start, and we tried to change things so that the teams could be self-managed. So now I'm really more of a coach in our structure. For me, as a coach now, I had to really completely change the way I thought, and I had to accept that I no longer take all decisions. Let the teams take their own decisions, and all of this really took me several months, it took us several years even, so that the teams could be well built and could really move forward with this model. What I've really understood about being a coach now with these self-managed teams is that being a coach means that you have to listen to your teams as much as you can. You can't judge people, to avoid being judgmental. It's completely different to when I was a director nurse. So you have to take a step back and try and understand all of the challenges that the teams face and be clear in the messages we send out. Ensure we're not taking decisions in their place instead of them. So we had to really understand what it meant for me as being a coach at La Vie Active. I need to be clear about the scope of my responsibilities. They asked us to have an official monthly meeting, so it was them, really, the caregivers who came to me with this idea. They decide the agenda for the meetings as well. They lead the meetings, and I'm there providing support. In recent years, sometimes they've asked for individual interviews with me, meetings with me. So for me as their coach, I need to take a step back and to try and help them, guide them with the training needs. Because when they're busy on a daily basis, it's not easy for them to take a step back and see what they need in terms of training. So that's something I do. And as a coach, I try to manage the team with a smile on my face, help them and to accept that they can make mistakes. They're human beings. So they can make mistakes and then we can change. So you need to try and ensure the cohesion within the team. There are always conflicts, whether it's about holidays, who can take holidays when, or different visions maybe of the care to be provided. So I'm there to try and help in that way, helping them to find the right solution to such conflicts. So really what I do is I say, what do you need? And they identify what they need. So the teams needed training for this during this sort of transition. So really change the way in which we work. So for me as a coach, I always have to be focused on solutions. Look at the problem and see, what do we want to do with this? For me, as a coach, I have to be more pragmatic about things as well. In France, we have a lot of procedures, and there's already a lot of rules and regulations. And so we're always focused on future potential problems. That's how we tend to be. So for me as a coach, I have to be a bit more pragmatic, a bit more factual, and just to deal with the problems which we actually have and look at the solutions. So for me as a coach, I'm also in touch with the support teams. So I do some of the administrative work, so the teams don't have to deal with this, all this paperwork. So I agree with what everybody else has said about paperwork and procedures. So my role is really to help protect the teams, shield them from this paperwork. So over the last few years, with the experience from the last few years, I'd say that you need to be patient and really enjoy being a coach. I think that's what it's all about. That's what I'd say to sum up. That's probably already been 10 minutes, and that's all.
Thank you very much to Barbara and to Karen for their view of TICC and Buurtzorg from a coach perspective. Hope you all found that interesting, and also perhaps a different way of doing things within your own organisations. So the next part of our agenda today is to consolidate what you've heard already from our partners regarding their experience of TICC, and also from our service users, our patients' experience, and also the role of the coach. And I've noticed that as we've been presenting, there's been comments in the chat saying how positive and inspiring the programme is. Certainly people have asked for more detail around that, which you'll be able to access through some of our lead partners. I'm sure contact details, etc., will be provided if you wish to contact people directly. But I would now like to ask those that have spoken this morning, with the exception obviously of our David and Catherine, if they would be prepared to answer some questions that Peter may have picked up in the chat box. And also I can see some of the comments that have been made there. The first question I would like to ask our speakers today is from Rachel. And Rachel has asked the speakers, is there anything they would do differently if they started the project all over again? And goodness me, as this has been going on since 2017, a lot has happened since then. So perhaps I could start with Sue and ask her if there is anything she would do differently if starting the project again, and then maybe Arnold can answer next as well.
Okay, so good question. Would we do things differently? I'm not quite sure, because it's very much you have to learn, relearn and revisit. So getting to grips with the principles was quite hard at the beginning of the project, and trying to get this model around your head. But then when you realise it actually just sits with what nursing is, it's like a light bulb moment, really, in terms of it's just what good nursing care looks like, and then how we then work with the organisations and our external influences within the NHS on how we can start addressing some of that blocks that allow us to do what we need to do. So would I do things differently? I've learned an awful lot, but I think it's a bit of a hard question. It's like the chicken before the egg a little bit. But yes, it's been a lot of learning. No, I'm not quite sure I can answer directly what I would do differently, but yeah, very helpful. Thank you.
If you think of anything else, Sue, perhaps you can put it in the chat, because everybody needs hints and tips if they're starting on this journey. Arnold, how about your organisation? Is there anything that you would have done differently?
Yes, I will speak in English because I think there's a little difficulties about the translations. The first thing I would have done if we started, I would ask for more money, for a lot of more money, because it takes times to make the transformation, the new organization, and also what we see, it's good for people, it's good for working people, it's good for people we care. So I think it's a shame we can go fast in France, because there's a lot of barrier, or we are see like too much innovations to go in the way. Those things I would have done is perhaps to take care more of the people who work with me when I have changed my organizations. I went to the pyramidal way to an organical way, more easy, and there's where a lot of them were have been lost in all this change. And when you work in another way, the first one who have to change is the leader, and perhaps it seems easy for him to change. When you work like this, the people, the home care workers, thinks for them easy to have more responsibility, because they think it's their natural way of working. The natural way of working is to take care of people, is not to follow a planning. So between them, there's a lot of people who in Vivat were lost when we have changed, and there was a lot of difficulties for them to find their right place. And what I think it's neat when we go in this way, we have to take care of the middle management, of the support people, and to help them to work with personal development or new way of relationships, to find another way of working. And when they find it, so they understand what they can earn in this way of working, is good for them. But we have lost nearly 50% of our staff in this way.
Thank you, Anna. I don't think you're the only organisation that's lost staff over the last few years, which takes me on to a question, I believe, Peter, that we might have had behind the scenes around staff's health and well-being. Peter, do you have that question that you can share with us?
Good morning, everyone. Could the panel say more about the impact of this way of working on staff well-being? And then there's a follow-on, which is, has it had an impact on retention of staff and staff turnover? And also, on the positive side, has it had an impact on recruitment?
So perhaps I can come to Karen first and then Barbara.
I think it has had an impact. I think with the model that we're implementing, you either love it or you don't love it. It's a little bit like Marmite. And I think that has an impact on staff that we recruit, staff that we lose. I think what we have done and we've kind of championed is that this is the way that we want to go forward. These are the positives. This is what we're offering. And this is what you get by working within this model. If people don't like it, then we have to take the fall, because actually if they're not into changing a model of nursing, then do we want those delivering care to patients within the structure that we're setting? That sounds quite negative, but it is about adapting that model going forward and being autonomous. We have had an increase in recruitment. We have had people more open to this model because it is taking it back to nursing that they know, that they're aware of. It's about bringing it back to that one-to-one and almost like bringing back the old Victorian days of riding around the streets on your bicycle, knowing everyone in the street. It is that feel to it. It is about putting the patient at the centre, but making the staff the centre of that as well. So we have had good results from recruitment. We have retained quite a few staff, but we also have lost staff on the way because the model just doesn't sit with them. They prefer that structure of a hierarchy, and that's fine. Both ways are fine. It's just for us and our organisation, this is where we want to go.
Thank you very much, Karen. And Barbara and team, is there anything you'd like to add regarding recruitment and retention?
Alors, je vais répondre en français, Pierre va traduire. Donc, est-ce que le projet a eu un impact positif et une stabilité d'équipe? Donc, en début de projet, il y a eu une fuite des personnes qui n'adhéraient pas aux équipes, à l'équipe autogérée. Donc, on a eu des départs, quelques-uns, pas tout le monde, mais des départs, puisque c'était trop demandé à l'équipe.
So, at the early stage of the project, we noticed that some staff actually left the team because it didn't like the way it went. It didn't match with their perspectives, the way they wanted to work.
Ensuite, jusque mars 2020, avec certitude, le projet a eu un impact positif.
And then we soon realized that up until March 2020, the project had definitely a positive impact on this aspect in terms of human resources.
Donc avec une réelle stabilité d'équipe depuis.
More stability at the human resources level.
Et donc, depuis mars 2020 à aujourd'hui, octobre 2022, nous sommes également sur une phase de fuite des professionnels qui souhaitent changer de métier. Et donc là, l'équipe autogérée n'a rien à voir. On est sur un contexte, une pandémie qui nous dépasse tous aujourd'hui et qui a fait que, des projections personnelles ont également évolué.
So you may have understood that March 2020 refers to the beginning of the pandemic, and it definitely had a greater impact on the project and on the staff retention, because we noticed that ever since we have some people leaving the team, not for the reason of the new model, the self-managing team, but it's more about a crisis of a lack of attractivity of these jobs in France. And I mean, it's broader actually. It's not only because of the experiment, the TICC experiment.
Pour finir, pour essayer d'être courte, nous rencontrons également des problèmes de recrutement de personnel liés à la conjoncture économique et politique, où aujourd'hui des soignants qui travaillent à l'hôpital public ont un différentiel de salaire très, on va dire, important aujourd'hui. On parle de plus de 300 à 500 euros de différence de salaire, ce qui fait que même quand nous rencontrons, l'équipe rencontre, puisque celle qui fait des recrutements, des nouvelles candidates qui se positionnent, tout se passe bien jusqu'au moment où le salaire est abordé. Et le projet, en tout cas, ce modèle organisationnel ne compense pas aujourd'hui une différence de plus de 500 euros à métier égal.
So the last point here is about recruitment. We are facing challenges at recruiting more staff members. This is mainly due to something else that is not relevant to the TICC project. It's more on the political level and the context in France. Since the pandemic, we have seen much more inequities developing in this sector, because basically in France, you should know that you have two types of delivering this kind of home care services. You can work for a public institution, or you can work for a private organization like us. And there is an inequity of salaries between those working for the public authorities, let's say an hospital or something like this, or if you work for a private association like us. So usually it represents a difference of income of monthly salary. The range is between 300 and 500 euros. So it's a massive difference for those who are applying for jobs. So usually they prefer to apply for jobs in public hospitals, for example. So that's pretty much it. You may have understood that it's not a proper interpretation. I'm just here to help. I hope it's understandable for all.
Thank you very much for your comprehensive answer and also for the translation. That was much appreciated because I know some of us haven't been able to get into the technical side of things. So Peter, I also understand that we've had a question around the patient story videos and some of the impact on the patient experience.
Yeah, so I'd like to, well, the question is, can the panel say more about the impact of this way of working on patient experience, but also on healing rates? Because that's something that Buurtzorg have been able to demonstrate in the Netherlands, that healing rates have improved for patients due to consistency of care and quality of care.
Okay, so I'm going to ask if Viola would be prepared to talk about the patient experience, and if she's unable to say anything about healing rates, then I might come over to one of my UK colleagues to answer that question. Viola.
I think there was a higher quality and fewer hospital admissions because of the home care team we created, and there was also a better bond with the clients from the team. I think due to the project and putting the talents from the employees above, we could realize a higher quality to the patients, and also we managed, or we could see that they could stay longer at home instead of come to the home care center or go to the hospitals.
Thank you very much. And nobody wants to be in hospital unless they really need to be. So admission avoidance is absolutely key, and definitely from a high quality of care. Sue, is there anything you'd be able to add around the patient experience, and in particular healing rates, or any other improvements in certain care aspects?
So we do know with us Merley looking at our healing rates in particular, it's had a big impact on improving our healing rates and enabling some of those chronic wounds and conditions to heal much quicker than they would have done under the traditional model. But it's primarily because of the continuity of care that we put in. So the smaller teams, they see the same face every day. You know, they walk in, they know if someone's not well as soon as they walk in. We'd lost that with the way the model had been expanded, with different people going in and out. So the continuity of care has had a massive impact on healing rates, not just in our community setting, but also in our wound clinics. So our wound clinics, they were quite large members of staff. They are now smaller teams, self-managed teams, working with primary care networks. And that continuity of care, we've had good patient feedback from the clinics as much as we have from the community in terms of the importance of continuity of care. One of the other aspects, obviously, is we have sometimes recognised that our staff haven't recognised a deteriorating patient early enough, perhaps to get help and support in. And part of that, again, is that lack of continuity of care. By putting the smaller teams in that have those relationships with their patients and their family, and as I say, can walk in, eyeball a patient and go, oh, you're not very well today, which they can't do when you've got different nurses jumping in and out of delivering care to patients. So yes, I think it's had a really positive impact on it, and the more that we expand and roll it out across our organisation, it will impact not only on healing rates, but hopefully hospital avoidance as well.
Thanks, Sue. And what you've touched on there is about that therapeutic continuity of care relationship with our patients, but also what I think you hinted at was that we have the TICC teams that many of us developed, which have been the formal teams that we developed, but also where we've taken some of the good practice into other teams such as wound care and tissue viability, and we've got quite a few TICC inspired teams that have developed throughout this project. I'm going to just do one more question before we come on to our last speaker of the day. Jos, I'm going to ask you about the money. Arnold said he wanted more money in the project, and then I think Gautier has asked in the chat around, do you let the self-managed teams, what administration do they have about the money? I wouldn't let nurses near the money, but you might have a very different approach to that. That's my own experience.
Yeah. Is when we started, there was also a national program in Holland, which was called the Transition Program. And we were very lucky that we could also get some money from this funding, which I think in total, the first 3 years was in total 1 million euro. But it has two sides, I think, because if you look at, for example, Germany, we worked with an investor, which created a lot of dependence on this investor, and that didn't work out very well. So from the perspective of the teams, it's very good that they created ownership as fast as possible. So if the teams understand what are the costs and income, and they can and the way they understand they can influence it, it makes it very strong from the start. But I agree with Arnold that changing an organization, what he did, it has another process. So building it from zero. There were many teams in the start who were within 2 months they were break even, and they were able to earn the money for the new teams. So you have to think about what kind of model is feasible for the way you're going to do this process. So different. I think there are different ways, but what I did when I started was building a model which could be sustainable based on the money we got from the system. So we were not thinking about we need a lot of extra money. But when there was the possibility, of course, it was very helpful because we could invest in for example, the IT was important. So we could build the IT system in a way that we thought it was useful to support all the things we needed because there was not, the IT we needed was not there. So we had to build it ourselves. But my idea is that the design of the process and to think in advance what are the possibilities and how can I use the system or the fundings which are there. A lot of countries have innovation fundings. That's I think important to start with. This is what I can say. For me, the money was not at the moment. For example, it is we have a profit on all the parts. My assumption is that when you start something, it has to be financially healthy within a certain period. Otherwise, you get a lot of problems.
Thank you very much, Jos. I think the importance of knowing the business side of this and our staff understanding the business. I work in a community interest company, so you do need to understand where the money's coming from and where it's going. Good point, though, around innovation and innovation funds, and that helps support. But for many of us, this is quite a large-scale change, and in order to manage change, you do need investment to help organisations take that time back, reflect, and look at developing their model. So thank you.
May I say one more thing, Helen?
Of course.
Because you know, we were in France. We were sitting at the Ministry of Health a few years ago, and the more the ministry or the system players are supporting by changing the system. So if they change the payment system, it helps a lot. So if they understand that if you focus on this, what I said about focusing on this cost per client instead of this different payments, the complicated what you had in, I think in France you had 71 different activities where that was paid for. If the minister or the ministry or the system players are helping, then it has a big advance, then the struggle will be. So that was my question for the European Union. If you have influence on the politicians of different countries, you should talk about the transition needed and their responsibility in it. So that part, I think, is underestimated in the program.
Thank you, Jos, and I hope that some of the bit about the politics and influencing the governments will come out as part of our blueprint challenges this afternoon. I'm conscious I've run over a little bit, but I hope that was valuable Q&A session for you all. I'd now like to hand you over to our last keynote speakers for this morning. So that is Genevieve and Marie, who are going to talk about the wider spreading of that inspiration from Buurtzorg throughout companies in their area and help in the home help sector. So I'd like to hand you over to Marie and Genevieve.
Bonjour, bonjour. Good morning, everyone. I'm Geneviève Manarino. I'm the advisor of the chairman of the CNSA Council. This is the 5th branch of Social Security in France, which is in charge of autonomy policies. CNSA focused on this transformation of home care offer, and they set up an assessment process of this transformation on 4 steps over the whole country, and to show the necessity to have this reflection on transformation. This assessment is done with 82 hours, which has allowed to do an assessment of home care, and especially on a key point, which is the organizational transformation. So this reflection that was done in several steps, and I will tell you how this was organized here in France. First, we are certain and convinced that this transformation with the local team, autonomous team, is regularly presented as an efficient alternative versus the current functioning. So this organization would allow an improvement of the quality of life, the working conditions, and a better quality of the service delivered to the patients, or even a cost reduction of the services. And we want to enlighten the decision makers, the public authorities, on the relevance of the support to this home care service transformation with this new model. And this study aims at identifying objectively the progress is made, but also the limits of a conversion of all of a part of this organization. So in 4 départements, l'Aisne, l'Eure, l'Orne, and the Nord, this assessment has been carried out in a situation where I think that the home care services will be strengthened because the policy that is in force in our country for dependent people is really insisting, and the CNSA voted this in the new program. They insist on the fact that people should stay home as long as possible. And we are developing further, making the healthcare system evolve, and this should create some benevolent environment for everyone working in this area, and the choice that people make of staying home. So this study was divided in 2 sections over 3 years. It started in 2020 with a first phase that was, setting the scene and to carry out this study, and then we had to build the reference charts, the organization, and then there was the evaluation phase per se that started in January 2022. A first assessment is going to be which is almost finished. It ended for the first part in December 2021. And then this assessment period will happen in a second phase when we can maybe better understand the transformation, the translations required, the impact, the effect. So the second phase started in January 2022, and as I said, it will end in 24 with some publications, interim publications, to better apprehend the global objectives that have been put in place in a very diversified manner. So the methodology is based on qualitative methods. That's the choice that was made. So there are interviews, observations, questionnaires, working groups on the one hand, and we decided to give the favor to this qualitative work to better apprehend maybe some less quantifiable aspects, such as the working relationships, coordination between the team members, or what people feel about the quality of the service. And then there were some quantitative indicators that will allow us to see what are the significant developments. So all of the data will be compared to the home care services that didn't go through this transformation. So they would be the baseline, so to speak. So these changes will be studied through an observation approach with the before and after situation. So how can we compare over time the organization of the teams before and after the transformation? That is why this assessment is going to take so many years, until 2024. And the first observation period is done before the transformation of the team, so that we can really make a first check after 1 year. And this is what was done at the beginning. So each section is a 2-year section. We collect information according to a schedule that was sent to the teams and then shared with the different partners. So in the second part of this program, and that's very interesting, the objective is to combine observations, questionnaires, interviews with the healthcare professionals, so as to identify the convergence points, but also the divergences, the differences in the organizations after transformation. And the effect of this transformation will be assessed on the quality of the service, on the quality of life of the patients, and the quality of life at work. That's really to assess the impact, and that's complementary and simultaneous. It's worth mentioning it. And we will pay a lot of attention on the acceptability of the new organization model for the patients and the workers at the end. That will take place at the end of the assessment. I heard you when you said it's difficult to recruit new professionals and to retain them, because if this transformation was not the right one for them, so we really have to walk on our tippy toes here, but we are convinced at the CNSA that this reflection around transformation is positive. This is what I had to say very briefly. Thank you.
Thank you both for concluding our morning session. I hope that everybody has found it very interesting, useful, and inspiring. I'd like to thank all of our speakers for all of your contributions and for being put on the spot for the questions and answers. We are coming up to our lunch break now. Please do continue to put your questions and comments in the chat box. During lunch, we will be putting some other videos on loop because we couldn't show all of the videos that we had today. So there will be some videos playing for you to watch. And then
excuse me, Hélène, please. I think we skip Marie Courreau-Gérard. Please, if you have just a few minutes to listen to her.
I do apologise. I am very sorry. I didn't realise we'd skipped over. So, Marie, I do apologise. I'm going to come back and say all of that again when you've finished. Carry on, Marie.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Désolée, merci beaucoup. Et moi, je vais faire en français parce que
Thank you very much. I will be speaking French because my English is not good at all. So I'll try to be brief. Thank you very much for your attention before the lunch break. I'll try to be brief. And I would like to add a few things to what Mrs. Marino said about CNSA, to tell you about what the Département in the Nord has implemented for the past 3 years to encourage the dissemination of those autonomous teams. For 3 years, the Département has committed to provide massive support to the organizational transformation for the home care services. This started in 2020. We had already done this. We had pioneer teams that shared their testimony this morning. And after this observation, we could see the positive effect of these structures. And in 2020, as an experiment, we wanted to support new structures, new organizations that could join in. So we supported them with 3 million euros that was co-funded with CNSA according to an agreement, 60% for CNSA funding, and to launch a call for project for those who are ready to start this adventure of the organizational transformation. So this call for applications has allowed us to support 11 services of home care. And we could do some observation through CNSA and to assess the results. And these 11 services have been selected upon their cases, their background, and we looked at the involvement, the dedication of the workers, the ability to set up this ambition of organizational transformation. And we selected 11 services with 2 million euros for a transformation that was supported first on 18 months. So the support was 1,250 euros per worker. So we decided to give them a good start, especially to fund the training of the home care providers, coaching, but also some meetings to share their experience and problems, and we also supported salaries, so the working time. So we compensated the working time when these home assistants were working. So we wanted to remunerate that. So that's the first support. So what we consider to be a success factor is that we set up a leadership network. So there was a public call for bid to recruit a service provider that would support this whole approach, to develop a network of leaders. Two benefits of this community. The first one is that it has allowed to favor return on experience, exchanges of those who took part in this adventure, to help others join in. And the other benefit is that this approach can be repeated more easily beyond the 11 services that were selected. So we started this from the beginning of our financial support. And for the repetition or extension of this approach, in 2021 we had the first positive returns with the home assistants on the conciliation between the staff, and 2, for the improvement of the work done and better quality for the patients. So we managed to continue this support by doing a second call for projects at the end of 2021, and it has allowed us to fund 12 new services that were willing to go for it. We had a mature project thanks to the work we've done with the Leaders Network. Some had already taken part in this adventure, and we mobilized 1 million euros to support these 12 new home care services. So after 3 years, we can say that now we have covered 1/3 of the industry in our department, and we have a bit more than 2,400 workers who have been impacted by this organizational transformation. And the first effects are visible now, even if it's not all perfect, but in terms of attractiveness of those positions, and also the quality of working conditions and the quality for the patients, we have very positive feedback that we see through the local meetings we organized between the market and our service providers supporting us. And we had also the testimonies of home assistants in these areas. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm available if you have any questions.